For today, we're going to be reviewing, going over our last new topic, which is object rights. We've been working with file system rights, where we say that this user, group, organizational role, whatever, has access to this folder, and then we tell them which folder, which rights they have to that folder, to that file. They can read, they can write, they can create, they can erase, they can modify, they can see the files exist using the file scan right. And we're working a lot with that. That is an activity that you do regularly. That is something that you modify quite often. When we looked at login scripts, that's one of those things that you create once, but you really don't have to do a lot of times because it's just sort of there. You might tweak them or modify them on occasion, but not necessarily this large-scale login script implementations. Same thing with intruder detection. Once it's there, it's there. Once you have templates created, they're there. Once you create servers, they're there. But file services and file service rights is something that you do a lot with. This last subject is dealing with object rights, which is very similar to file system rights. So it's not a huge learning curve, but it's also something we don't do regularly. You don't go into the object of the eDirectory system very often and change who can do what to there. You can do it on occasion. Usually that's where you get roles and groups set up, though. You put people in roles, you put people in groups, and then they have access to what they need to have access to. So I'm going to start to take you through this. Then the rest of the day is going to be working with reviewing anything that you want to review. Start thinking back, looking through your notes. Gosh, I missed something one week. Could I review that again? Or how do I do this when practicing this with this? And just giving you a chance to practice with that. Starting next week, you're going to be given then 4 weeks to go through different scenarios, demonstrations, I shouldn't say scenarios. You'll be asked to implement something, and then you need to demonstrate, something that's going to show that you've done that skill. It's not going to be a full-scale implementation of something. I'm not going to have you show you installing the server because that, it's a very long time. But then you need to show something that is going to that would demonstrate that the server is installed and configured the way that's been asked to. So that's just one example. So just very short ways of demonstrating that you have accomplished some of those tasks. We'll probably talk about those later on, get some input, some ideas. I definitely have a lot of ideas of what I want to do, but I'll be looking to you for other ideas and suggestions as well, give you a time to work together. We haven't had a lot of team projects together before, or be able to interact and be able to really share with each other a lot of things, so that might be a good opportunity to do that for this class. Moving on with the object rights. With the object rights, we're talking about who can do what in the eDirectory, not in the file system, but the eDirectory. So I want to go ahead and launch, I'm launching Chrome, and it brings it to my server. I'm going to Management Services. And since I'm working with the eDirectory or the directory services, I'm going to be going into iManager. When I was using the file services rights, I was working with the files, and that's where I was using Remote Manager. But I'm going to go into iManager because I'm working with the directory. And I proceed. It seems that the first connection just takes longer than others. And I go ahead and log in. LTC is my password for my admin account. This is pokey today. There we go. Moving along now. I like working with the browser area, being able to look at my whole directory structure. Look under the tree, and I can see my different objects. Now, in this case, I have my tree, the root of my tree, which is Benfield tree, and then I have two organizations. Normally, as we said early on, normally we'd only have a single organization, and it makes things a little bit easier, but we can do things from here as well, as across multiple organizations. If I go ahead and look at this object, this Benfield tree object, I can look at the current level, which is the tree itself, and I can go to Edit. Oh, no, I don't want to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Actions, and I can see who the trustees are of that object, so I can modify the trustees. I click on Modify the Trustees, and here I can see this object called Admin. This is why we've been able to log in as admin and do everything. We can create organizations, we can create organizational units, we can delete people, we can create login scripts, we can modify intruder detection, we can work with the whole entire file system. All of that, all of those things that admin can do is because of this single entry right here at this level. Just like we work with the file system, when you give somebody or a group or an organizational unit, whatever, access to a folder, it's from that folder on down and flows on down. So anything that you give at the tree level flows on down to everything else, to all the organizations and everything underneath it. This happens automatically when you create the server. When you install the server and you create the eDirectory for the very first time, it says you need to create an administrator account. And by default, it comes up with the admin name, and we accepted that. You could have changed it to anything that you want, though. And it created that account. And the only reason it created that account is so that you could continue to work with this. If you didn't have this account, you would have a server, but no one would be able to access it or modify or change it. So it creates this account automatically. A lot of people, for some reason, think that the name admin or the name administrator, somehow if you log in as that, the system just recognizes it and says, hey, that's something special, and because of the name, I'm going to give you these rights. Nope, it has nothing to do with the name whatsoever. It's because I assigned certain trustee rights to the root of the tree. Now, this is where it's slightly different with the file system rights. And the file system rights will just give you straight rights. You can do this, this, and this, and this, and this with the folder. Well, when we work with eDirectory rights, or object rights as I'll also call them, we actually have two different ways of working with rights. We have what's called entry rights, and then we have property rights. Entry rights are saying, what can I do with the entry as a whole? Now, if you remember that eDirectory is a database, it's basically a big, big database. When we talk about entry rights, we're talking about the entries in the database themselves. What can I do as a whole with different entries? Now, I can browse, which is the same as see, which means that I can see what exists. So it's like the file scan of the file system rights. I can create objects. I can rename objects. I can delete objects, and dynamic and nested really don't apply. And then it's inherited. With file system rights, all you get is inherited. That's all that can happen is inherited. There's nothing else that can happen. With object rights, you can check or uncheck the inherited checkbox to say whether it's going to flow on down. We definitely want it to flow on down, because if we don't have it flow, if I uncheck this right now, I'd have my entire system as useless. I would not be able to access it as any other account to change people, delete people, change people's passwords or anything. So you have to be very, very careful with object rights. It is possible to set up in a situation where no one has rights. If I delete the admin account right now, no one has rights. If I unchecked inherited, no one would have rights. And there is no undo button, unfortunately. So you have to be very, 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 very careful with object rights. File system rights, you can always get around, you can fix, you can back up, you can restore, that kind of stuff. Object rights, no such backup. Or, well, there kind of are ways of backing up your eDirectory, but it gets really, 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 really messy. So we're not going to work with that. Then we have what's called supervisor. Supervisor entry rights is giving you all the rights. And that's all that we need, supervisor entry rights They then give us rights to everything, everywhere, and even flows down to the file system rights. Now, if I were going to work with property rights, which we will later on when we work with the help desk group, that's where we talk about what we can do with specific objects, specific properties, specific parts of or fields of those properties. So in this case, this allows me to create objects as a whole. So I can create a user, I can create organizational units, or whatever I want to do with that. Property rights would say, well, once you have the object, once you create the user, what can you do with the user itself? Can you change their name? Can you change their password? Can you reset their intruder detection? Can you add them to groups? All those things are properties of those entries. So when you think of databases, you have two parts. You have the entry, and then you have the properties of those entries. If you think of a phone book, the entry would be the whole record, the name, the address, the phone number. The properties are just those: name, address, phone number. As we looked at the users, and we created users and templates, we saw that in fact they had lots and lots and lots of properties. Their home directory is a property. Their middle initials are property. All those different fields are properties. So if I have entry rights, supervisor entry rights, it goes along to all the properties rights then as well, and so everything flows on down. So you can see how really easy it is to basically create another administrator. One of the things that you should do is in fact have a backup administrator. The admin account is well known. Everybody knows it's called admin, or if they don't know, it'd be really, really easy to figure that out or look it up and find out that it's the account. And if somebody really wants to mess with your system, and if they know that you have intruder detection or some kind of other intruder system set up, they could disable your admin account. Log in 3 times, the account's disabled for a day. Now no one can do any work as the administrator. Having some kind of backup administrator is a really, really good idea. Calling it backup admin may not be the best, because that might be kind of relatively easily recognized or found out about. So there are different concepts and different ideas. Making a true backup, saying backup admin is fine in some situations of whatever you want to do. Another way of doing this is basically creating a user account. Like say I take somebody in operations, third shift operations, and I create a new user called Larry. I'm going to create a user, Larry B. Now I definitely want to give this person a secure password. I'm going to make it LTC, but anytime you have administrators or backup administrators, you want to make sure that you have very secure passwords. I'll use the template. You know what? No, I won't. I'm not going to create a template because I don't want it to have any of the restrictions, and I don't even need it to have a home directory. So I go ahead and click OK, and I click OK. So now I created Larry B. If anybody does have access to the directory, they're going to look around. It's just like, just another user, not a big deal. But to you, it's a backup administrator. Now, in order for Larry B to have access to everything, I can then go up to my tree or to wherever I wanted to and give them full access. Let's just say for this example, I wanted, well, I'll do it for the whole tree. Why not? So I go to the tree, and I go to Actions. Nope, I need to select the current level, sorry. Current level, then Actions, then Modify the trustees. And I want to add a trustee. And I go ahead and find my user. Here's Operations, and third, and here's Larry. So I put Larry out there. Here's Larry, and I need to assign Larry some rights. If I looked at the assigned rights, there are some default rights. Sort of like, well, it depends on what system you're using for giving file system rights. If you're using Windows Explorer and giving file system rights, the default is read and file scan. So you get some rights. You get basic rights. it's sort of the same thing here. If I'm giving Larry access to something, I give him very basic rights. It gives me the ability to browse. So this is the entry rights right here. It gives me the ability to browse the entries, see them. It lets me navigate through the entire tree, lets me see that there's a Garopa organization, that there's a sales organizational unit, that there's a West organizational unit, that there's a sales manager role, and there's Joshua. And I can see all the entries. It also gives me the ability to read all the attributes. I get to see their first name, their last name. I get to see what their login script is. I get to see when their password expires. I get to see when their time restrictions are. I get to see all the attributes of all the entries. And by the way, everybody has a default access anyway. If you wanted to, you'd be able to see you'd be able to see your own object rights. This just lets you see everybody else's object rights. You still can't change anything, but it allows you to see everything just by default. All I need to do to make Larry a true administrator is check this one checkbox. Supervisor entry rights automatically gives you all the entry rights, and it flows down into all the attribute rights. So as soon as you have supervisor entry rights, you essentially have everything else. Now you have two options. One is just leave everything the way it is, or you can, clear these things out, get rid of this. I really don't need that anymore, and just make it a little bit cleaner of just saying supervisor entry rights. Make sure it's inherited. Otherwise, it only applies to that specific container alone. If you left the other stuff there, it doesn't make any difference because it's all additive. I go ahead and click Done when I'm done. And now let's try it out. Let's log out of here. We're going to log in as Larry B. I'm now logged in as Larry B. And I'm going to see if I can do anything. I'm going to go to the tree, and I'm going to create a new object, a new organization. Called new organization. And sure enough, I can create the new organization. I can choose that organization, and I can delete it. And now the organization is deleted. I can go under Garopa. I can go to Human Resources. I can look at Emma's account. I can go up to Restrictions, and I can change it so that her password doesn't get forced to be changed every 120 days, and I click OK. I have complete rights. I can do anything that I want anywhere. That's a way of making another administrator. Like I said, it's always a good idea to have at least one backup administrator account, if not two or three. In fact, users, you may want to set up special user accounts just for administrators, such as if I was an administrator, I want a regular user account for myself as Paul or Paul B, but then to use daily basis, people shouldn't be logged in as administrator all day long as their normal job function. It's too easy to mess something up. If I need to do administrative functions then, maybe making a Paul admin account, I log in as Paul admin, then it's me, it still identifies me as making these changes as opposed to this nebulous admin account, which anybody could have done, so it can still sort of keep track of what that administrator is doing, but it's separate from my regular account from just doing normal everyday activities. All of a sudden I go to delete something and just wasn't thinking. Being admin, I'd have rights to delete everything. I could wipe things out completely by mistake. If I just logged in as my normal user account, I'd only be able to delete things that, as a normal user, I'd have access to. So it's kind of reasons that you might have multiple accounts for users. And trying to avoid just everybody who's administrating the server logging in as one general admin account because you know what's going to happen, somebody might change a password or whatever, or even keeping track of what the different changes are. It's also good to have a backup administrator account because it is a database. Things can happen. It's just an entry. If something ever happened to that one account, we've trusted that one account for the entire semester. and we relied on it, and we just sort of took it for granted. It's a database. Things happen. If that entry ever became corrupt or invalid or something a little strange on that, there is no recovery. There is no, oh, well, skip the admin or whatever. At least having another administrator account, they can then go in and either delete that account or recreate it or fix it or whatever. So that's a way of making a full administrator. There are other reasons for possibly doing this as well. Sometimes you might have possibly a secure department, or you might have a department with lots and lots of turnover in. Let's use operations as an example. If I take a look at operations, I might have just a lot of people coming in and going out of operations. And do you as an administrator want to keep track of all those people all the time? Maybe you want to be able to create, have somebody help you create accounts or delete accounts or expire accounts or change passwords or whatever for a specific area. Now, they'd definitely have to be trained, and you'd have to teach them exactly what to do and have procedures and policies, but you can give them access to different things. So right now, if I take a look at this, I have an operations manager, and Sarah B is my operations manager as a whole, and possibly she does have some network training, or you give her that network training that she needs, and you want to have her sort of take over and manage just the operations area. Well, you can do that because I'm in operations right now, and I click on the current level, and I look at the modify the trustees of the operations container. I can add a trustee, and I go ahead and look under operations, and have the op manager's role. So I don't even have to choose Sarah. In case Sarah moves to a different department, Sarah leaves, somebody comes in. Now, how did Sarah have those rights or whatever? I don't have to worry about that. I can choose the role and give the operations manager rights to the operations container. Looking at the assigned rights, and there's lots of details of ways that I could really give her very specific types of rights, like only be able to create people and only be able to delete people or modify just very specific aspects of it. I don't want to get real deep into this. It can get kind of overwhelming. We'll just make it very, very simple that she will essentially become the administrator, the entire administrator for her container and everything underneath it because it's inherited. So as soon as I put the operations manager and having supervisor rights, and I click done, let's make sure done. Sarah now would have complete access to that container to add people as they hire people, get rid of people, if they're temporary people, put expiration dates on them. And let's go ahead and try that out, see if that's going to work. So let's log out. I'm going to log in as Sarah B. So now I'm logged in as Sarah. It says Sarah up in the top corner. Go ahead and look at my tree. And here's my entire tree. Now if I go up to the tree and I want to create a new organization, I create new object, I create a new organization, and it says I can't. I don't have sufficient rights to create that object. Well, that's because she doesn't have rights at the tree level. She'd only have it at the organization of ops and down, organizational unit of ops and down. Even if I go into Garopa, so I go under HR and I look at Emma, I can still see Emma's stuff, and that's just because everybody can see everybody's stuff. But if I went under, restrictions, I can't change anything here. So I don't have the ability to change any attributes for anybody else in other containers. But now if I go under Group and then Operations, and let's take a second shift person, look at Joseph. I do have this options. I can make these changes to enable, disable things, change the values, change the password. If I wanted to, I could create a new user. I can create a new user just fine. I can modify that new user, anything that I want to do. New user the 5th. And I can go here and I can delete that user as well. So now you can see that that's how you give administrative rights to certain areas. This would be a very special kind of circumstance that you would do. You would not normally do this. Some people have that philosophy. Well, every manager, department manager should have supervisor rights to their department. They should be able to add and delete people. I would disagree with that unless they really knew the training. You know, just because you're an accounting manager, does that make you a network administrator as well? Do you understand the impacts of rights and of putting people in groups and, you know, deleting people? You know, what does it all mean and how does it all function? Accounting has their job functions. Human resources has their job functions. They take care of the people, the personnel. Accounting takes care of all the money. You take care of the information systems. You keep track of the data. You manage all the user accounts. That really is ultimately your responsibility. If you delegate that off to somebody else, you are still ultimately responsible. But it can be useful in some situations where you have lots of turnover especially, or very, very large departments. Any questions so far? We good? Makes sense? Something you can do? Okay. Moving along then, now I'm going to get into some of the specific attributes, property rights, the property rights. We're going to use the help desk as an example. So if I go underneath, well actually I'm under Sarah right now, so I won't be able to do anything with the help desk. Let me log back in as Larry. And I go to Garopa, and I go under Information Systems. And I have an IS manager, and that's fine. But I really want to be creating a help desk group, because I might want to be putting people in the help desk group. I might want to take people out, and instead of giving to individual users again and having to manage rights, it just becomes a little bit more difficult. And I want that help desk to do some very, very basic administrative tasks. I don't want them creating people. You know, again, that's still my responsibility. Or deleting people just on a whim. They decide to delete somebody. Probably not a good idea in general. It depends. That's completely arbitrary. There are some help desks that do that. If I need an account deleted or added, usually, however, it usually has to have some kind of formal form signed off by a manager. It's not just somebody, hey, you know, can you add an account? Calling the help desk, or you know what, delete Bill's account. We don't need it anymore. Well, who are you? Who says that you can delete it? And so on. So we're going to make it nice and simple and very, very controlled. The help desk in this case is going to help by being able to change people's passwords. People always call for passwords. They can't remember my password. And if they actually did forget their password, they probably locked their account as well. So they have intruder detection. It's not really intruder, though. It's just them messing it up. So starting off, I want to create a group. So new, create group. And I'm going to create the group, and I'll call it help desk. And so I have a help desk group. And let's see, I'll put Brandon and Lauren both in it. So look at the group members. So I'm just going to put Brandon and Lauren in there. Look under IS. I click on Lauren. I click on Brandon, and I click OK. And then down here, I click OK. So whatever I do to this help desk group now, Brandon and Lauren will get those rights. So I want this to apply just to this organization, not the entire tree, not the entire system, Because if I looked over here, I really have two different organizations going on. Well, I might have a different Benfield help desk as opposed to the Garopa help desk. So I only wanted to apply to the Garopa container, the Garopa organization. So that's where I click. I click on the Garopa container, and I want to modify the current level. I go under Actions, and then I click on Modify the Trustees for the Garopa. Now, I didn't point this out, but maybe you noticed, every time I go to a container or an object, the object is a trustee of itself. And it kind of makes sense. If I am Paul, I have access to the Paul object. I can change a lot of the information inside the Paul object. Not all of it. Even though I'm Paul, I can change things like when my password expires, or if I have to have it at least 5 characters long, or what my time restrictions are. But I can change things like my login script. I can change things like my name and my phone number and my department. So there's some things that you can change about yourself and other things that you can't. But now here I'm on a Garopa. I want to add a trustee. I want to add that help desk trustee. And now this is where I start working with the property rights. So under help desk, if I click under assigned rights, I get all the basic stuff. I can basically read all the entries. So I can see that I can see the entries. I can see Bob and Larry and Sue and Sally and this template and that organizational unit. I can see all that stuff. It's basically a file scan type thing. The browsers, I'm sorry. And then the read and compare allows me to read all the attributes of all those objects, but I still can't change anything like their password. I want to add properties to this then. So this is where my list actually gets longer. So this deals with all the attribute rights. So with all the attributes, I can read them. But now with other specific properties, I can do other rights with them. And one of the things I want to find is a really, really simple one, is password. Oh, I need to show all. Sorry, show all properties. I always forget that one. Show all properties. And I'm looking for password management. There it is. I'm looking for password management. By the way, look at all the different properties that you have. I can scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. Those are all the different properties or fields of those entries that you can work with. So lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. In this case, I wanted to add password management. So for all of the attributes, I can read all the attributes, but for password management, I want them to read and write. Now, I don't want to get into a lot of other things, but read and compare always go together, and write and self go together. So we're just going to give them all these rights right in here. By default, it is not inherited. You always have to come over and make sure you check inherit. And I'm not sure why it's not on by default when you add property rights, but it's not. So make sure that you do all the rights, which is read, compare, write, and self, and check inherited. So that's for password management. And that's really easy. So now when Lauren or Brandon logs in, just as regular as every day, somebody calls up and says, hey, I need my password reset. They can go to that user's account and they can reset the password. It's a little bit trickier, quite a bit trickier, when you're trying to clear intruder detection. Password management is a really nice management tool that they sort of all combined all the password functions sort of together. Intruder detection is not done that way. You need rights to each of those attributes. Like there's a little checkbox that says you can uncheck it that says that the account is locked by intruder. If you locked by intruder checkbox that you have to uncheck, that's fine to be able to uncheck that. But when you uncheck that, it also resets some other fields. And if you don't have the right to those other properties, it won't reset it because it thinks it's still either the time isn't reset or else the number of invalid attempts hasn't been reset. So we really need to add 3 specific properties on here in order to make intruder detection work for us. So I'm going to add another property, and you can't add multiple ones, unfortunately, so I can't hold down Control and select them. But I'll scroll on down, and the first one is locked by intruder. Let's see. Here it is. Locked by intruder. And again, I want to make sure that I have read, compare, write, and self, and then inherit on there. So locked by intruder. The next one is called login intruder attempts. Login intruder attempts. Now that's the one that keeps track of it. So there's 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts. When you clear the intruder lockout, you want to reset that back down to 0. But if you don't have the rights to change that property, it won't change. It's going to still say, hey, there's still 3 invalid login attempts. So login intruder attempts, make sure I do the write and self and inherit. And then the last property I want to add is login intruder reset time. Login intruder reset time is right there. And I click OK. So login intruder reset time. I add these, and I add inherit. So again, for all the entries, I'm able to see all the entries. I'm able to see all the attributes of all the entries, and I'm able to change the password, change intruder reset time, and change the intruder attempts, and change the checkbox that says locked by intruder. So those are the only things that I can change. I click Done. So let's try this out. Let's go log in somebody. Let's log in as Larry. Make sure I put the right context in here. Operations, season 3rd shift. You know, first logins always take a while, and I don't know why. Come on. Okay, that's not right. That one's not right. I better make sure. Actually, I have intruder detection on there. I don't. Okay, we'll give you 1 try. When I recreated my organizational units, I must have forgotten to put that on there. Okay, let's try it again. Okay. Okay, now that time should have detected it. Now, hopefully on my server, detected it. Yes, intruder detection locked out. And now the next time it tells the user that it's locked out. Okay, login denied. Someone's attempted to access your account by guessing your password values. That someone, by the way, is you. You were guessing at your password. Now it's locked out. Poor Larry, can't do anything done today. Calls up the help desk. Lauren happens to be on the help desk that day. Let's log in as Lauren. Password expired. Great. 3 Grace logs in. No, I don't want to. I'm logged in as Lauren right now, and now I'm able to check out Larry and his password and all that kind of stuff. A couple ways you can do this. One is, if you scroll down here, you do have, a passwords role or a task down there that you can work with. So I can click on passwords, and so I can, set up password policies. Challenge. No, that's not what I want to do. There's a couple ways of doing this. No, that's not the one. Well, I can edit the user this way, modify the user, and modify its properties as well. I'm just going to go the normal way of using the tree. And there he says, under I'm located, my account is located in operations, third shift. So I go to Garopa, I go to operations, I go to third shift, and sure enough, there's Larry. If I click on the Larry and I go to actions, you have a couple different things here. The first thing is here is the clear lockout. And you can set a password. So those are two things that I actually have rights to. I'm not going to do it this is the shortcut way, definitely you can do it that way. I'm going to show you the longer way just to show you what the different fields look like. So now if I look under Larry, as Lauren, if I go in and I try to change anything here, I don't have the plus or minus sign over here, so I can't edit anything here. If I go into restrictions and I look at login restrictions, I'm not allowed to change anything here either because I was never given rights to the account disabled or the expiration date. Those weren't the rights that were given to me. The ones that were given to me, though, were password management. So underneath password, I can do a couple different things. Actually, the only thing I can do under here, is change the password. So Larry doesn't know what his password is, so I go ahead and I click set the password. The new password would be LTC, 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 LTC. I set the simple password at the same time, and then I click OK. The simple password cannot be set. Let's try that again. Something's wrong with my simple password. Oh, well, that's okay. It created my password for Larry. We're not using the Windows Share login anyway. That was only for the beginning when we didn't have the Novell client or have login scripts and things. So I have to figure out what's wrong with that. So I'm able to change his password. Unfortunately, his account is still locked. So even with changing the password, it doesn't give him access to his account. It's still locked. But now you can see I have access to this checkbox. If I didn't have that intruder lockout access, I wouldn't be able to uncheck this. Now, as soon as I uncheck this and this get reset. And if I click apply, and class has sufficient rights, what am I missing? That should be fine. It's not locked anymore. Come on. Let me see if he's locked. Something's acting weird. Yeah. Oh, which one am I missing? Let's see, login, intruder attempts, login and reset time. What else am I missing? Let me look that one up. Let me double check what those are the three rights that it should be. When I take a break real quick, it's almost that time anyway, and let me just double check those intruder lockout rights and see if I missed one on there. So I'll give you a few minutes of a break. Okay, I found my mistake on here. I missed an entry, missed one properties. It's right in my notes and went right past it. There's actually 4 entries that you have to enter, and I only did 3. And this is something that you definitely want to document. You're not going to know. It's not intuitive by any means. So having it documented somewhere would be very valuable, and then following the documentation is even more important. I'll go back and take a look at this. Under actions for the GROPA, I have my help desk. Oh, I can't do this, Lauren. Sorry. Lauren can't fix her own rights. Go back underneath GROPA. Modify the trustees of GROPA. And the assigned rights. Like I said, I only had 3 locked by intruder attempts, login and intruder attempts, and then the reset time. I missed this one, login intruder address. So I'll just remove it to sort of catch you back up. I want to add that property, and it's login intruder address. Login intruder, right here, login intruder address. So there's 4 entries that you have to do, and then also giving them rights, and then inherit. So now we have enough rights because when you clear the intruder detection, it clears all those fields as well. And I didn't give the right to the address field, and therefore it's saying, hey, that's where the intruder is coming from. It's going to keep it locked. So let's go ahead and take care of Larry. We're going to log in. Larry B. We'll have to lock his account again. So now my account should be locked, and now it should tell me that it's locked. Okay, good. So Larry calls in. Lauren comes to the help desk. Let me log in as Lauren. Browse for the object. Where are you located, Larry? I'm in operations. Okay, I'm under 3rd shift. Okay, I found your account. I can click on Larry. Under restrictions, if I click on restrictions, then I go to intruder lockout. It is locked. This is the IP address. That's the reset time. And then the attempts is 1. I want to clear that, and I click apply. Then that clears all those fields the way it needs to be done. So apologize about that. Missed that one. Login intruder address also needs to be added to there. So now I already set Larry's password to LTC. Let's go ahead and try it. Go ahead and give it a try, Larry. Okay. Larry B, LTC. And then I click OK. And I'm in. So I'm working successfully. Thank you, Lauren, for your help. No problem, Larry. Have a good day. Questions on any object rights? Something that you can do is, in fact, limit the administrator rights as well. And be just like with the file system rights, I'm able to reassign rights or block the rights from coming in. So admin right now does have access to everything, but you can limit admin's rights to a certain area if you wanted to. Just to go with file system rights, all you do is reassign the rights, and then everything from there on no longer gets those rights. Or you could use filters in there as well. So if you understand the idea of how it works with file system rights, it's going to apply. That same concept is going to apply for object rights as well. I won't necessarily take you through that. I don't think we need to. There wouldn't be a real need for that typically on the object side, but you can. All those really fancy rights situations and scenarios that we came up with, you can come up with just as extreme in here. You could say that Kathy can have supervisor rights at the main level of her department, but not in any of the subcontainers, or can create people but not change passwords, but then admin can, and whatever you want to do. Anything that you want to do, you're capable of doing. you're not limited by any means of what you want to do. Questions on object rights? You good at all? Good with all that? Okay, so that's it for that topic.